Hello. I recently did a three-part series on shooting real estate photography, and I had some follow-up questions emailed to me by a viewer, so today we're going to answer them. Here we go. So it was really great to have a viewer email me and have some questions, some follow-up questions about how to do white balance for interior shots, specifically real estate shots. So today we're going to be answering those questions from a gentleman named Michael. Thank you very much for sending those out. Very appreciated. Before we get into this, of course, everything that we do here is brought to you by Camera Lessons Online. That's the website. There we're all about teaching photography skills. So I've got a 4-hour course, Introduction to Photography. I've got books on travel photography and macro photography and a bunch of other things there as well, many free downloads, stuff like that. So go check it out. So 4 questions came in from Michael, and we're going to answer those one at a time. So let's go. So this first one is how to actually do the custom white balance. Now I'm going to show you that on my camera, which is a Sony in this particular case. Please know every camera does custom white balance a little bit differently. So your results or your process will vary, but the way that you wind up with a final product will be the same. What we need for this to work is a neutral tone, 18% gray. I think I mentioned this in the video, but not just any gray is technically accurate. 18% gray is a very specific shade, and so there are many shades of gray that are out there, some of them with more magenta or more green inside of them, and those will white balance differently. 18% photographic gray will give you a neutral tone. So that's what we use, and you're always looking for it to actually say 18% gray on the packaging, and it will be an actual photographic tool. So that's going to be important. You're going to see the process of me doing this with my Sony right now.
So the first thing we're going to do is do a test shot in auto white balance here so that you can see what that looks like in comparison. So of course I just put the camera into auto white balance mode and shot a picture there. And it took a second just because I did this in a timer mode, because as you can see at the bottom, I was shooting at 1/5 of a second to make sure I was shooting at 100 ISO. So this is important. I went to set, and then it gives me this little circle in the middle of the frame. And I need to position my 18% gray cloth directly over that. And I'm trying to mix the light that it's in, as we're talking about, so that I measure that mixed color temperature. And here it's asking me what register I want to save that to. And the register is important because you can save multiple different custom white balances or settings or profiles, rather. And so now that's saved in custom number 2, and now I can shoot a photograph here, and we'll be able to see a difference between the custom white balance and what the camera would have given me in auto, and you're going to see a pretty big difference here, actually, because as we can take a look, that one's the auto. The auto is far more magenta than the scene actually was in front of me. So the more greenish one is actually a more accurate view, and with that little T set in the front, it's very, very different.
So this question is about positioning, and what's really important is that we don't position the camera around the white balance, we white balance around the camera's positioning. So first, you're going to just figure out the spot you want to shoot the room from. You know, what angle do you actually want? That's the direction that you white balance from. And this is one of those things about light that's really important. So if you just go outside and you've got the sun over in one spot and you hold your hand to it, one side will be lit, one side won't be lit. So same sunlight coming in, but your hand, the part that's facing the sun, is going to be a warmer color temperature than the other side, which is in shade. So the directionality to a light source actually changes the white balance, which means we set up the camera position first and we white balance from that camera position. So set up the camera position and then we set up our white balance tool and white balance off of it, and we're picking up the color temperature from that point of view. Okay, so this question is about distance. So where do we stand relative to the camera's position? Now we're assuming, in the way this question is phrased, that we have window light. And the key thing about window light is that it mixes color temperature. Where you have window light coming in, you have a mixed color temperature. It's averaging up towards neutral, 5,500 degrees Kelvin. Other parts of the room that might be in more shade are going to mix differently. And so the key thing about 18% gray is it's really nice for this to be somewhere in the neighborhood of between 15 and 25% of the frame. That's really what you're aiming for. So I actually like relatively big gray cards or gray cloths. They give me more latitude. And what I want to do is move as far forward as possible as I can. But what's key is if you move too far forward, you might leave the window lit area and you might white balance an incorrect part of the room. So you move as close as you can to the camera while still white balancing off of the color temperature that's the predominant part of the room. So in this particular room, I have windows on my right side and I have windows behind me. And those windows come up about 5-6 feet in that direction, which means that I could move 3 or 4 feet this way if the light's coming in angled like this, and still be in a correct mixed color temperature environment with this particular camera setup. If I move too far forward, I'm no longer in the sunlight that's coming from the windows, and I'll be white balancing improperly. So as close as you can while still in the correct mixed color temperature that you're white balancing for. So this question is about metering mode, and I want to stop at that point. And it's important to say that your metering mode has nothing to do with your white balance. So if this question is specifically related to the white balancing question, it doesn't matter because metering is the amount of light that we're trying to determine and white balance is the color temperature. Now, to answer the question directly, I actually don't use spot metering for anything. I'm in center weighted metering 100% of the time. My process, and this is one of those things I write about on the blog, I talk about in the online course and anytime that I teach here, I shoot manual exposure for absolutely everything, and so I actually don't pay attention to metering. I just move my exposure until my histogram looks appropriate. The reason I leave my camera in center-weighted metering is that I specialize in portraiture, and so I might have a TTL flash on in my camera in manual, and you shoot portraiture with center-weighted metering so that it averages skin tone across a face and so that you don't accidentally meter part of clothing. Like if I was wearing a black shirt and I metered off of that, it'd throw my exposure off. With an interior shot like this, I would never use spot metering. If I was doing aperture priority or shutter priority, I would always be doing something center weighted or evaluative. Evaluative is not a bad choice when it comes to interior spaces, but I think you're going to get a much better and more accurate exposure by building it yourself and reading your histogram. So those are the questions Michael sent in. Thank you so much for sending those. I think they were really thoughtful, interesting, and good follow-ups. So if you had similar questions and you're glad that they were answered, I'm so happy for you. If this was useful, give us a like, give us a subscribe. It's free. You knew that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.